Welcome back. I'm Alfred Weber, and we have the privilege today to be with Kevin Annett, who is the North American Field Secretary for the International Tribunal for Crimes of Church and State. Welcome, Kevin.
Hello, Alfred.
You have a number of issues that you want to update us on. I know that there was a recent extraordinary action here in the Vancouver area, in the Lower Mainland area of British Columbia, with Kinder Morgan, that we didn't have a chance to go into because it actually occurred the day after our updates. So could you go in more deeply into it and exactly what the operation of the common law court orders here eventuated?
Definitely. Well, it has great relevance because it's really all about the power of common law. People keep saying, well, we know it exists in theory, but it does have the power to enforce its rulings on people in society. And the whole case of Kinder Morgan is proof that it does have that power. In a nutshell, what happened was Kinder Morgan was running roughshod over the neighbors and the people of Burnaby Mountain. They were running a pipeline through. They were digging boreholes in the area to create this pipeline near Simon Fraser University. There was a massive protest. The RCMP moved in, were arresting people unilaterally, and over 110 people, I think, were arrested just to make way for this pipeline that didn't have any support from anybody really in the community. What we did is about a week before the RCMP and the courts basically stood down, we notified the BC Supreme Court and the RCMP and Kinder Morgan that we were placing the whole dispute under common law jurisdiction for a number of reasons, not only because the courts and the RCMP are already serving a convicted criminal body known as the Crown of England and the Government of Canada, but clearly this was a case of a private interest harming the public good. And when the courts and the government are helping that private interest harm the environment, harm the rights of people, attacking and destroying their civil liberties, then obviously the common law has to intervene. We notified them that we were going to put the RCMP under common law jurisdiction. We were warned. We issued a notice to the RCMP that they were to stand down and not intervene and not commit further assault, illegal assault on the people in that community. Literally the day after we did that, the BC Supreme Court dropped all the charges against all of the people they had illegally detained. They denied an injunction to Kinder Morgan to allow the drilling of those boreholes. And basically the RCMP stood back. And what was really significant about that is that it wasn't coincidental. It was directly in result not only of our issuing of that stand-down order in the jurisdiction of the common law, but it was clear that the judges in that Supreme Court were connected to those other judges that we had just named as members of the 12 Mile Club.
I see.
And so it was clear from our information that those judges did not want that information brought onto the public record. And they knew that once we were there in the court with people, we were going to raise that stuff. We were going to say, look, these judges are compromised already. They're operating unlawfully. So all of that had a role to play in that victory.
I see. So because the ITCCS had, through its investigation, raised the threshold issue of judges and other high-ranking personnel participating in ritual sacrifices of children and young adults in the 12 Mile Club, which is on yachts outside of the 12 Mile jurisdiction. And that occurred, within the last 2 or 3 weeks, correct?
That's right. That was in one of our recent interviews, we brought that out. And the connection between the 12 Mile Club, and this is part of the bigger political reason, the ties to the Ninth Circle and the involvement of Denis Lebel, a senior cabinet minister in the Harper government. An issue that could conceivably bring down the Harper government on the, as we enter into an election in the coming year. the involvement of Gérald Lacroix, the now cardinal from Quebec, in that same group. All of these political factors definitely had bearing on what happened, and it shows you that if you press at the right moment and the right time, even though we may be few in number, we have the common law and the truth on our side, and it shows you the impact we can have.
So, what they think is their greatest strength, that is their ritual sacrifices of children, in fact, has turned out to be their greatest weakness in a certain way.
Absolutely.
Right, right. Has there been any follow-up of this? Have people begun to comment on the common law jurisdiction, on the common law court here in Vancouver?
I can tell you that the common law courts are being set up in Canada under the jurisdiction of the Republic of Canada, which will provide a constitutional framework for the common law to operate in Canada. There's a convention being planned in January, the issuing of a proclamation, and the Republic Organizing Committee in Winnipeg, just in the last couple of days after that Kinder Morgan victory, using the common law in Vancouver there, within a couple of days they had nearly 200 new requests for information for people to join up, most of those in Western Canada. And that included people who wanted to convene, I give you one example. I got an email from someone in Vancouver Island who said, we want to convene a common law court over here because, once again, the Canadian Revenue Agency were stealing money from us, or basically defrauding us. This is an issue that comes up over and over. And we're seeing, we're helping with them convening a common law court, probably based in Nanaimo, that's going to be calling witnesses to show how the Canadian Revenue Agency, the taxation service, is basically deliberately defrauding Canadians and stealing money from them. And that kind of leads into kind of the broader picture here of one of the things that we hope to do in the new year, we plan to do in the new year, is to broaden this whole stand-down order, the kind of revoking of the authority of the Crown, by saying that we need a whole broad campaign of reclaiming the land itself, nullifying the debt, basically saying to people that any order coming out of the Canadian government is null and void under international law, under the verdicts of the common law court. And that really means that people have to do things like, when the Revenue Agency bills them, you just write null and void under the authority of the Republic of Canada and mail it back to them. And enough people do that, and they will directly revoke the authority of the Crown, whether it's the taxation services, mortgages, people over their head in debt, all of that. We're giving people a sign that this isn't just about civil rights and attacking the powers of RCMP goons that are arresting people. We're talking about striking at the very financial heart of the system that keeps everybody in debt slavery, and we can use the common law to do that. So this is a very exciting development, and it's part of the new work that the Republic and the common law courts will be doing in Canada in the new year.
Now, we had always heard, in fact, when we were over in Vancouver Island, this was emphasized to us, that there is in Vancouver Island also reports of ritual sacrifice of children and child trafficking going on there as well. Is that something that the ITCCS has run into?
Vancouver Island is a big center of this, and I know that. I got my feet wet over 20 years ago in Port Alberni in the Nanaimo area, learning these things from Aboriginal people. I mentioned in an interview I did just yesterday with a British journal, which we posted at itccs.org. I said in that interview that one of the things that was apparent to me very quickly as I began to interview more survivors of the Indian so-called residential schools run by the Catholics and the Protestants was that many of these killings in the schools occurred in a ritualistic manner. The way bodies were buried, the way children, survivors described the tortures, the insignias, the way people were being branded and tattooed by these priests. It all had cultic significance. We also know from police-trained psychics, one of whom operates in the Mid-Island Vancouver area and is being used by the police there to find missing Aboriginal women. I met with this woman. She literally would go and point to a hill and say, dig there, that's where the bodies are, and they'd find the bodies. And this is a very competent woman. She said that it's been, we worked with her on and off for a number of years. She's been examining objects and others from residential school buildings. She tells us exactly where and how the children are buried. It was cultic murder, especially in the Port Alberni area. And these things are continuing. We know that a lot of the West Coast Native chiefs, these are government chiefs, are playing a heavy role in drug importing from Asia, where the ships land the drugs off the west coast of Vancouver Island, places like Bamfield, some of the Indian reservations in the Souk area north of there. All of this is tied into human trafficking as well, and the murder and disappearance of especially Native women in that area. So, we are looking at, because of all of this convergence and all this tremendous new response we're getting from our work in Canada, we're looking at convening a Vancouver Island Common Law Court in the coming year. It's going to be looking at all of this stuff, including all the evidence that I've accumulated over 20 years now about that area.
Right. Now, you wanted also to to update us on significant developments that have happened both in London and also in Rome.
Well, it's all connected, as you know, Alfred. And what's been in the news a lot in England is Theresa May. She's the Home Secretary. Interestingly, she's the same person who ordered me deported from the country when I tried to come back in May 2011, when I tried to come to England and address a rally about child trafficking involving government people. The same Theresa May has convened kind of an in-house inquiry into the serious evidence that over 20 members of Parliament in England are actively involved in child trafficking. And they recently announced this kind of inquiry, but a lot of the child abuse groups, the victims, have declined to take part in this inquiry because they know it's a whitewash. Now, what came up that very same week, Prince Charles pressured the British government to bring in new laws putting a veil of secrecy over the actions of the British monarchy. Now, isn't this interesting? Right when the evidence about their involvement in the Ninth Circle and the murder and killing of children comes out, now there's a law in England that says you can't even review the financial activities of the monarchy. You cannot look into any issue that might be deemed invasive by the British royals. So in other words, they are completely protected. They don't have to disclose anything, including how they're spending the taxpayers' money. But we know this is in direct response to that. We're getting close to revealing a lot of this stuff, and they're running scared. That was an important development because it shows you the effect this is beginning to have, and the concerted cover-up going on out of Whitehall, to cover all that up. The other thing is coming from Rome. I'll let you ask, if you have anything about that, and then we can get on to Rome.
Well, our understanding is that in this inquiry, they could not find anyone. They said, it's very difficult to find anyone who can conduct it. And what they meant, it's very difficult to find anyone who will cover it up.
Right. I think the climate has really shifted, I'm finding, Alfred. So many people are coming out now, and so many more people are willing to publish things like our interview today, that it's beginning to seep into the whole population now, this knowledge. MPs are getting pressured, they're getting questions from their constituents. They know they have to do something to respond, and they're trying to do what Canada's done with their so-called Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and that is use the government and the media to conceal the crimes, to silence witnesses, destroy graves, which is what they've done in relation to the Indian genocide here. But I don't think they're going to be as successful in England, because one of the reasons is the climate in Europe in the media is much more open. Now, I know the corporate concentration and control of the media is just as bad there. We see that in a place like Italy, where Berlusconi, the former prime minister, basically owns the media there. He's a multi-billionaire. But there's so much more alternative stuff going on. I think we have an example of that in Laurent Louis and the Dutch People's Tribunal that's being set up.
Right.
There's too much of that activity over there to allow them, I think, to cover this up. So, that's just my personal take on it.
Now, getting back to this law in the UK, is that a proposed law or it's actually been passed? Yeah.
Together, huh?
Yeah, sure. Sorry that we were we were cut off there. So I'll ask the question again.
Okay.
Is this proposed law to apply a veil of secrecy to the activities of the royal family? Is that a proposed law, or has that been passed?
It's being debated as we speak. My understanding, though, from people in London is that it's pretty guaranteed. It's coming directly from Prince Charles, and so the British government is going to comply. It also to cover their own involvement in this child trafficking. I expect it's going to be law very soon.
Well, one can't pass a law to cover up criminal activity. I mean, that will not, that does not excuse an entity from criminal activity. Well, and so it seems that Prince Charles increasingly is being cast in the role of kind of the thug, who's being sent to make sure that things get done to keep the crime family in place. Is that what you find?
Sure. It's don't forget it's not going to be presented like it's a way to cover up crime or wrongdoing by the royals. It's going to be presented as a way to protect their privacy. It's always couched in those terms. It's like when they brought in laws over here allowing more police intervention and arrest without warrants, and that's sometimes described in terms of, well, just ensuring secrecy or not secrecy, confidentiality. Like in a court, they covered up the residential school crimes by saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, this matters before the court. For the privacy of the people suing the government and churches, we can't give you any details." It's always couched in those terms, but we understand what's behind it.
Yeah, yeah. And also, it appears as though, for example, if you go back 12 months, the sort of PR put out by the palace was that the Queen was about to retire and to skip a generation onto Prince William and Kate, and now they seem to have doubled back and said no, it's going to go through a proper succession through Charles. I guess that they're afraid of prosecution. That would be my take on it.
Well, that's interesting. When that happened a year or so ago, that came out very soon. It's very important to compare what was going on at that time. Quite soon before that had come all the information about, do you remember the secret meeting that former Pope Benedict had with Elizabeth Windsor up at Balmoral Castle in Edinburgh?
Right.
It came out basically that the Queen Elizabeth once again was violating her coronation oath and was planning to bring the Anglican Church back into the Roman Catholic Church, which is grounds for her not just arrest but removal, abdication, because she's violating her oath of office. The terms of her bringing the Anglican Church back in is that they would agree to apply this criminal policy of crimen solicitanis, where priests are expected to cover up child abuse and protect the perpetrators. What governs in the Catholic Church now is active within the Anglican Church, thanks to Queen Elizabeth. Now, all of that was coming out in the news. Suddenly, there's all this talk about the poor Queen may resign, and all of this Kate and William nonsense in the news. Another big distraction, like what Jorge Bergoglio is doing, the great reforming Pope, to distract away from all of this increasing garbage that's coming out. It's the same game.
Right, right. Now, just changing our focus for a moment to Rome. What activity has there been there?
Well, it's I wanted to kind of go to Rome by way of Holland, if you don't mind. There's
okay, sure.
That I actually got today from Anne-Marie van Billenberg and somebody who will be working with the Dutch People's Tribunal, who shared this to me on secure email, and it's related to what we're talking about. One of the things that Anne-Marie and others are sharing is that Interpol which has been playing a role in arresting some of these Drangheta child traffickers. At least Interpol officers have. Apparently, the headquarters of Interpol in The Hague has been built by what's called TBI Building Company, which is 100% owned by Drangheta.
Wow, the mafia.
The mafia, the European mafia that they're apparently are hunting down, in fact, built their building. And not only that, but provides, Drangheta is apparently also involved in these private security companies in Europe. Like Blackwater, private armies, mercenary armies. Actually, most of the Blackwater money now comes domestically from within the U.S., where they're replacing the police and the army in that. The same thing's happening in Europe, and Drangheta have their dirty fingers in that. They are working with Interpol as joint business partners in that, apparently. So Interpol, like the RCMP, are deeply involved with the mob. And if there's Interpol officers arresting Drangheta, you have to be asking, well, who are they arresting? Who's really manipulating it? That's kind of part of what we're seeing. Also, what was really interesting was, I'm just flipping to this other email. There's these brothers in Holland that organize most of the drug trafficking, who have been providing the children to the Catholic hunting parties, these Ninth Circle hunting parties.
Wow.
They're called the Van Corlaar brothers, Korlaar, the Van Corlaar brothers. They're deeply involved with the Royal Palace in Holland. They provide young male prostitutes to Queen Beatrix, according to the source. They're the ones who make all the videotapes when they bring in politicians. They give me a long list of all the politicians and police they control. And also, and this is a direct quote, the Drangheta brothers Van Corlaar have paid over $1 million American in the last year to the head of the Egyptian Secret Service for all of the videos and photos made by the Egyptians on Dutch citizens who in Egyptian hotels had sex with young girls and boys. So in this kind of like international network of providing child porn and all that, all roads lead to Rome and Drangheta. And so I mean, it's more of that that's coming out now, and it kind of leads to the next topic having to do with the present Pope Bergoglio himself.
Right. Just prior to going there, I just want to get the facts straight. So what we have here is Interpol, whose building in Holland was built by a Drangheta mafia company.
Yes, that's right.
And that that there's monies paid there's monies paid to Egyptians who secretly film Dutch sex tourist people who go to Egypt, so that then those films are for extortion of Dutch people. Is that it?
Extortion, also aimed at politicians. And we know the CIA does the same thing. They've admitted to that, running child brothels in Bangkok for junkets by congressmen and senators. They entrap them that way whenever they need more money out of Congress, whatever, right? So this is kind of standard practice in government circles. But what's interesting is the connection between Drangheta and Interpol and the governments around the Mediterranean, because we know that a lot of these children being trafficked are from these Mediterranean countries. Greece, southern Italy, Portugal, Romania. These are the main conduits of children into the child trafficking networks in Holland and Belgium especially. And so we're just kind of putting together this map, and time and again you'll see the same names come up, not just these Van Corlaar brothers, but Catholic bishops. I mean, it's constant. The Catholic Church involvement in this, they just keep turning up like a dirty sock every time you talk to somebody.
Right, and it's all centered around the power structure of that's centered on pedophilia. That is, seems that there's a world power structure that's centered upon pedophilia that extends from the Vatican to the monarchies, that follows the structure of the secret Treaty of Verona in the 1700s, which you think is a diplomatic document, but it really seems to be a secret pedophilia ritual sacrifice network. Is that? I'm just going to
Yes.
spin this out.
Well, no, that's getting on to getting our finger to the bone closer, Alfred. Essentially, the Ninth Circle, according to our evidence, began as early as the late 1700s, which is a significant date because that's when the Illuminati was formed.
Right.
Under the Jesuits went underground for a while. They were officially apparently outlawed. The
Right.
same year they formed the Illuminati, and that's when the Ninth Circle documents start appearing from about the same period.
Right.
So the child sacrifice, it's all part of our very, as we know, we've talked about this before, based on the old Roman festivals like Termalia and Alia in February. Also Saturnalia, the upcoming, what Christmas is actually based on. It wasn't a Christian holiday, it was a Roman one. Saturnalia involved child sacrifice, human sacrifice, between the 23rd and 27th of December. And we can expect another spiking of child sacrifices in Rome.
Yeah, yeah. So all of this then, so that we have a tie-in then to the beginnings of the world child sacrifice, child trafficking with the Bavarian Illuminati, which started in 1775.
Right.
But also with the Secret Treaty of Verona, which set up the whole Vatican monarchy structure, which appears to be linked into the pedophilia networks now,
Right.
and which is tied into the founding date of 1776 of Skull and Bones in my alma mater, Yale, which ties into the head of the pedophilia networks in the U.S. That is, the Bushes tying into the Rockefellers, and how the pedophilia networks in the U.S. power structure are tied in, and probably tied back into the oil in all of the tar sands, tie back in through the Bushes and those people there, so that the tar sands are probably being exploited by all the oil companies that do ritual sacrifices. I'm sort of speculating, but
No, it isn't. It isn't speculation, really. It's more tips of the iceberg appearing.
Yeah.
We know the resource companies are often very tied in, like Cargill.
Yeah.
Time and again, people describing witnesses, two of them now, saying that as children they were taken to the basement of the corporate headquarters of Cargill in Wayzata, Minnesota, just outside Minneapolis, and seeing children raped, killed there, kept in cages. I mean, all of that.
Yeah.
Two of the Cargill executives named in the action in Montreal on August 15th.
Yeah.
Now, what's another interesting tie-in here is, do you remember our announcement of when that ritual killing of a young boy in February occurred in Rome?
Correct.
San Lorenzo Church, involving the Harper cabinet minister Denis Lebel,
Correct.
Cardinal Gérard Lacroix, just a block away from the Jesuit headquarters.
Correct.
That next week, I just discovered this when going over all the calendars about all this, the chronology. Interpol sponsored a conference in Rome a week later on child trafficking and the rights of the child. Now here's Interpol, the partner of Drangheta, which is a partner of the Ninth Circle in the Vatican, holding a conference about their own crimes. And this is what you see them do all the time. It's like right when something surfaces, they put in their spin to get everybody thinking, oh, there's somebody good kind of dealing with this. And these investigations, like a Royal Commission in Canada, buries facts and silences people. It doesn't bring out anything. It protects the perpetrators. That's what happened in Rome just after that killing. And it's interesting. It's always couched in language having to do with protecting children. Like child find in America is, in fact, a means by which pedophile or child traffickers and child killers find children through the official child protection agencies. The Pope, Jorge Bergoglio, is planning to come to America September 22nd to 27th, 2015. He will be appearing in Philadelphia to speak at a conference on the family, preserving the family. These conferences are usually covers for child trafficking. for children to be passed around, for for all the links to be made, the kind of networking among the high-level child traffickers under the guise and protection of this benign sounding conference on the family. After that, he's going to the United Nations to speak to the General Assembly. And now we are going to not only be there attempting to arrest him with a citizen arrest warrant, we are notifying the police and the FBI that he is a wanted felon. He's a convicted criminal, a fugitive from justice. And if they don't arrest him, they will be seen as an accessory to a crime.
Right.
And under common law, they'll have to stand down, allow citizen sheriffs to arrest this guy. Now, it's a real possibility in America because don't forget, you've got the Oathkeepers. You have serving sheriffs and policemen and army personnel, military personnel, who have sworn an oath to defend the Constitution against the government if they have to. Okay? Now, that means that these Oathkeepers and others we hope to be working with by that time to have trained to actually arrest Jorge Bergoglio when he comes on American soil. So this is, and this is a real thing in America. There is a real counterculture now existing of a lot of well-trained, well-armed police and military who are determined. They are determined to protect children and to protect the liberties of Americans. So this is a real possibility in September for the Pope to be detained, or at least stopped from coming, because if he knows this is happening, they might think twice.
Very good. Yeah, because you've got sheriffs, you've got the common law sheriffs, then you've got the elected sheriffs, the civil law sheriffs, and then you've got the Oathkeepers, all of whom are empowered, and then as the ITCCS discovered when it was able to disrupt the planned child sacrifice in Montreal, in some police jurisdictions, 50% of the police may be working for the child sacrifice, but the other 50% may be working for justice, for truth, so that there are always police men that when push comes to shove, as it is more and more, may actually move to do their duty.
That's been our experience, Alfred. It's not even a hypothetical situation. We know it happens. We had Kel Gadban, the head of human trafficking unit in the Ottawa Police, working with us to stop the Montreal sacrifice, and he paid that with his life. There's the Kinder Morgan example, pressuring the Supreme Court and the Mounties to stand down. We know in America it's even more explosive because people are ready to do this. They've already started doing it. I spoke, when I did my last Midwest tour, I spoke to the sheriff in Minnesota who said, there's a list of corrupt judges who I'm going to arrest because they're issuing false mortgage claims against farmers so that they're getting paid to do this so that the mortgage company can grab their land. They are ready to go, and they in fact are acting. So this will be a very dramatic example of that, naming the #1 war criminal, Jorge Bergoglio himself, since we've indicted the Roman Catholic Church as a criminal body. We already know it is. So this is a way to rally people, and we're very, very kind of enthusiastic about this one.
Right. Very good. And of course, in the middle of this, you're getting ready for the convention. Could you tell us more about this?
Well, the people forming this kind of the basis of the Republic right now, which is, at this point, it's an idea. We have local organizing committees disseminating this idea. The only way a republic can come about, a country comes about, is through people making it. I remember there's a very famous quote from John Adams, one of the few founding fathers who wasn't a Freemason, by the way, who said that the revolution triumphed first in the hearts and minds of the people before a shot was ever fired at Concord against the British soldiers. That is the same thing we're finding. This is an idea whose time has come. We know 58% of Canadians want a republic. That's the opinion poll from 3 years ago. They know the Crown and these churches are criminal bodies. They're waiting for somebody to act. So we find when we drop a match, this thing is igniting all over. And it's exceeding our ability to organize it right now, but that's okay. It's sprouting up all over. But what is going to happen in Winnipeg is there will be a proclamation released. There will be people meeting to draft a formal constitution, and then basically say, now it's up to all of us to take back our country, nullify the orders of the Crown, order the police to stand down, appoint your own community sheriffs and juries, and what's really encouraging, actual land reclamations. You know, we're working, I just got an email from a group of young Mohawk men in Ontario who said, we're going to take back our local reserve, we're evicting the Catholic Church, we're taking back our land. Can you help us? I mean, we get these statements all the time coming more and more now from people. And
right.
So it's really this action on the ground that people need to take, and that's what's going to build our nation.
Yeah. So you see 2015 really moving into more and more accomplishment on the ground, action on the ground, etc.
Absolutely. This is the way. It's like a tsunami building, and Kinder Morgan case was one example of that, how the elites are worried big time now, and they're responding for the first time. So I just say to people, really get on board now. Now, you know, we've broken the ice, we've set the example. They can look, of course, at itccs.org. Also, Republic of Kanata, K-A-N-A-T-A, republicofkanata.com. And just write to our central office, itccsoffice@gmail.com.
Good. Do you have any words or insights or visions that you'd like to leave our viewers with?
Well, you know, it's kind of like recognizing that this is part of a whole global shift happening. I had, you know, really interesting experience about that the other day when I got this email from a person who said that, Kevin, I don't know if you realize this, but really we're riding this wave of a whole spiritual renaissance occurring on our planet, where people are awakening finally to the real identity and power, not just their power, but their identity that's being submerged for a long time. And I think all of this is an example. Like, who could have imagined that the Supreme Court of British Columbia and the Mounties would stand down when normally they just run roughshod in that situation?
Right.
It's the this kind of, I think you could call it an inner spiritual collapse of the elites. These entities that have ruled the human race for so long, they're collapsing. They're vanishing as we speak, but their illusion persists in our own mind, probably because of our own patterning, our own habitual. You know, the human brain acts habitually quite often, not consciously. And we go around with these habitual ideas that, oh, there's not much you can do, when in fact, we're looking right in front of us, the evidence that it is all collapsing. One idea pursued over years can move mountains. And we're seeing that the power people are awakening to. So when people say, well, by what authority do you operate? I say, the authority born in you. You know, the God-given authority you have as a sovereign man and woman, you're the basis of government and law and spirituality and everything. And that's what we're hoping too with the church, that people will awaken to that, leave these false institutions, and reclaim everything that's been taken from us. Well,
thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for taking the time out to update us today. And we look forward for you coming on in the future to update us as events develop.
Thanks, Alfred. There'll be a lot of events, so everyone stay tuned. I mean, have a nice rest over the solstice, but get ready, gear up for battle in January, I say.
Very good.
Thank you.
Kevin.